Have you ever wondered what it would feel like to truly inhabit Frank Herbert's legendary desert world? Funcom's Dune, Awakening doesn't just answer that question. It throws you headfirst into the unforgiving sands of Arrakis with nothing but rags and determination. After spending countless hours navigating sandstorms, dodging massive worms, and building my legacy among the dunes, I can confidently say this survival MMO captures something genuinely special about the Dune universe, even if it stumbles along the way. Set in an alternate timeline where Paul Atreides never existed, Dune, Awakening positions you as a nameless exile struggling against the planet's harsh realities. This isn't your typical hero's journey. Instead, it's a deeply personal fight for survival, where every drop of water matters and the ground beneath your feet could literally swallow you whole. The moment you step onto Arrakis, you'll understand why this game has captured my attention for weeks. Funcom has crafted an environment that doesn't just look the part, it actively tries to kill you at every turn. Standing in direct sunlight without proper protection will literally cook you alive in seconds. The oppressive heat creates a constant tension that transforms simple resource gathering into life or death decisions. But here's where things get really interesting. The sandworms aren't just impressive visual spectacles, though they absolutely are. These massive creatures serve as roaming area denial mechanics, forcing you to constantly rethink your approach to exploration. I've lost count of how many times I've had to frantically scramble for rocky terrain when that telltale rumbling starts beneath my feet. The fear is real, and it never gets old. The visual presentation deserves special mention here. Using Unreal Engine 5, Funcom has created landscapes that genuinely take your breath away. The way light filters through sandstorms, the imposing silhouettes of rock formations against the horizon, and the subtle environmental storytelling scattered throughout the world. It all combines to create an atmosphere that rivals even Denis Villeneuve's recent films. What sets Dune, Awakening apart from other survival games is how intelligently it uses environmental hazards as progression gates. That massive gap of open desert blocking your path. You can't just sprint across it hoping for the best. You need to craft your first vehicle, plan your route carefully, and respect the dangers that await. The hydration system particularly impressed me with its integration into the broader game mechanics. Water isn't just another resource to manage, it's a precious commodity that drives political conflicts and shapes your strategic decisions. I found myself genuinely excited when I discovered my first moisture trap blueprint, knowing it would grant me a small measure of independence in this hostile world. Temperature management adds another layer of complexity that never feels arbitrary. Seeking shade isn't just recommended, it's absolutely essential for survival. This creates a natural rhythm to exploration where you're constantly planning your next move based on available cover and time of day. Night exploration becomes genuinely appealing, offering cooler temperatures at the cost of reduced visibility and different dangers. The faction system represents one of Dune, Awakening's strongest elements. Choosing between House Atreides and House Harkonnen isn't just a cosmetic decision. It fundamentally shapes your available quests, blueprints, and base components. I aligned with the Atreides during my playthrough, and the sense of honor versus pragmatism that defines their questlines felt authentically Dune. The Landsraad voting system adds a fascinating metagame element where player actions genuinely influence server-wide changes. Watching guild politics play out through actual democratic processes creates emergent storytelling that goes beyond what the developers explicitly scripted. When our server voted to implement weapon restrictions that favored melee combat, it shifted the entire PvP meta in unexpected ways. Building your influence from exile to political player provides genuine satisfaction. The progression from scraping together basic shelter to commanding resources that could influence planetary policy taps into the power fantasy that makes Dune so compelling as a setting. Unfortunately, not everything in this desert paradise runs smoothly. Combat remains Dune, Awakening's most glaring weakness, and it's a significant one. Melee encounters feel stiff and unresponsive, with timing windows that never quite click the way they should. The emphasis on blade combat makes thematic sense for the Dune universe, but the execution falls short of creating satisfying encounters. The shield mechanics add tactical depth in theory. You need different approaches for shielded versus unshielded enemies. But in practice, it often just means awkwardly switching between weapon types mid-fight. I appreciate Funcom's commitment to lore accuracy, but when that accuracy comes at the expense of fun gameplay, something needs to give. Ranged combat fares better, but still feels somewhat hollow. Enemies tend to be bullet sponges rather than tactically interesting opponents, and the weapon variety, while decent, doesn't quite capture the unique technological flavor that should define Dune weaponry. The technical presentation tells a story of ambitious vision meeting practical limitations. While the game runs surprisingly well for an MMO of this scope, there are enough rough edges to occasionally break immersion. I've experienced disconnections during crucial moments, watched mountains vanish and reappear, and dealt with clipping issues that sometimes trap you in terrain. The character animations particularly stand out as needing more polish. While the environments look stunning, player and NPC movements often feel like they're running at different frame rates than the rest of the world. It's not game-breaking, but it's noticeable enough to pull you out of otherwise immersive moments. Server limitations also create frustrating bottlenecks. The 40-player cap per server means frequent queue times, and the transition between single-player mission instances and the multiplayer world can involve significant waiting periods. These aren't deal-breakers, but they definitely interrupt the flow of play. Resource progression in Dune starts deceptively manageable before revealing its true grinding nature. Early crafting feels rewarding and accessible, but mid to late game resource requirements become genuinely punishing, especially for solo players. The jump in material demands between tech tiers feels unbalanced, requiring hundreds of hours to access high-level content. This creates an interesting tension between the game's respect for your time and its desire to create long-term engagement. I understand the need for progression gates in an MMO, but some requirements feel excessive even by genre standards. The beautiful world makes resource gathering less tedious than it could be, but it's still grinding at the end of the day. Despite its shortcomings, Dune: Awakening achieves something remarkable. It makes you feel like you're actually living in Frank Herbert's universe. The attention to atmospheric detail, the intelligent use of environmental storytelling, and the way survival mechanics reinforce thematic elements create an experience that transcends its technical limitations. This isn't a game you'll master in a weekend. It's a world you'll inhabit, struggle within, and eventually learn to thrive in. The faction politics, environmental challenges, and social dynamics create emergent narratives that rival any scripted content. When everything clicks, when you're flying your ornithopter across the deep desert while coordinating with allies to establish a new outpost, Awakening delivers moments of pure magic. The question isn't whether this game has problems, it does, but whether its unique strengths outweigh those issues. For me, the answer is absolutely yes. Dune represents the most authentic interactive interpretation of Herbert's vision we've ever received, and that's worth celebrating despite its flaws. If you're looking for polished combat or technical perfection, you might want to wait for additional updates. But if you're craving an MMO that dares to be different, that respects its source material while creating space for genuine player agency, then Arrakis is calling your name. Just remember to bring water.